Senator J.D. Vance, welcome to the program, sir. How are you?
Good, Glenn. How you doing?
Very good. Thank you for standing up for this. This is, in my opinion, disgusting what is happening, tying these two things together, and the way we are financing Hamas and Iran is really stomach-turning. So thank you for standing up. Tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Glenn. I mean, look, the problem here is that Joe Biden sees a political opportunity in 1,400 murdered Israelis. The terrorist attack happened. Of course, it's a very terrible thing. We lost a lot of Americans in that terrorist attack. And in my view, we want to empower the Israelis to do as much as they can to degrade Hamas. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, you have a nonstop Ukraine conflict that is, we've already poured $120 billion into. Joe Biden would like to pour another $60 to $80 billion on top of that. It is, I think, actively contrary to America's interests to food and fuel prices in the world to have this war continue. And so Joe Biden has figured out that he can use the Israeli conflict to sell the American people on indefinite war in Ukraine. And in fact, he has delivered a supplemental spending package to the Senate that would do exactly that, combine Israel and Ukraine. So it makes those of us who are pro-Israel, makes it harder for us to oppose the package. And unfortunately, Glenn, this is the important part. Too many Senate Republicans are going along with it. When you combine these packages, you put pro-Israel conservative senators in a bind because they don't want to send another $60 billion to Ukraine, and Joe Biden is effectively using dead Israeli children to sell this package to the American people. We need to separate the packages, have a separate debate because they are separate countries that raise separate questions and problems for our country. That is the reasonable thing to do, and we shouldn't be going along with Joe Biden's politicization of the Israel tragedy.
But how are you going to do that? I mean, you have people like Lindsey Graham who, thinks this is just gangbuster. This is the greatest because now you can get both. I mean, there are those who, honestly, J.D., can you tell me what does victory in Ukraine look like? I can tell you what victory in Israel will look like, an end of Hamas, possibly an end to the nuclear bomb building capability of Iran at the most extreme. What does winning look like in Ukraine? The death or the overthrowing of Putin?
Well, we have no idea, Glenn, and this is the problem with the Biden administration's policy is they haven't articulated what are we trying to accomplish in Ukraine, how long is it going to take to accomplish it, and how much money is it going to cost us to do that? The answer is, and when you talk to them in private settings, they will tell you, Glenn, they really have no idea how this is going to end. Their hope is that if they kick the can down the road another 6 months, maybe the Ukrainians make a strategic breakthrough, maybe the Russians just get tired of fighting, maybe the Tooth Fairy intervenes. Something is supposed to happen that makes it possible to bring Russia to the negotiating table. They know there is no victory for Ukraine if you define it as pushing them completely out of the territory that Russia controls. So they're just hoping. And I don't think we should be spending $60 billion of American taxpayer money on top of $120 billion we've already spent on a hope of Joe Biden and his foreign policy advisors. It's disgraceful, and it's disgraceful that too many Republicans go along with it. I will say, one final point here. Obviously, Lindsey Graham and I disagree very stridently on the Ukraine question, but even a lot of my Republican colleagues who are pro sending money to Ukraine, they want to defy the packages because they recognize it's a slap in the face to Israel to tie their fate to the Ukrainian war.
Aren't we also tying the border security to the Ukrainian funding?
That's exactly right, Glenn. And this is just another example of Joe Biden trying to take things that are politically popular for conservatives, package them together, and then use that to sell the interminable war in Ukraine. Now, by the way, Glenn, if you read the fine print on the alleged border security package, it actually gets much worse. What we're really doing is funding and facilitating Joe Biden's open border. We're sending resources to communities that are housing illegal migrants. We're spending a lot of money to transport migrants from the southern border all across the country.
Jeez.
There's nothing in the package for real border security. So it's not just that it's a political ploy by Joe Biden to call something border security so we can support Ukraine. When you read the fine print, it doesn't even accomplish border security. It's really, really atrocious what this guy is trying to do. And look, I expect it, right? I disagree with Joe Biden. I didn't vote for him. I'm not going to vote for him. What is ridiculous is if Republicans go along with it. So the encouragement I'd make, Glenn, to you, to your audience, because you have a huge audience and the voters actually have a voice and their representatives listen to them. Call into D.C. and tell them, divide the packages. Do not hold up the border and do not hold up Israel's security on Joe Biden's Ukraine war.
I got to push back on this one, and I hope you have a good answer. But I, for one, asked my audience to call and be polite. And they called a couple of weeks ago. And Sean Hannity asked his people and Levin and everybody else. We called the House. And the weasel Republicans actually used that as an excuse to not do what we felt were the right things. They said, we had these people calling us and saying all kinds of things. I can guarantee you that it was only the odd duck in my audience that would have done that. They wouldn't have called them names and threatened their family. Maybe that happened, but that is not the American people. That is not the people who support the rule of law and the Constitution. So when you say call the Senate, what is that going to do?
Look, Glenn, I understand people have frustrations, but it actually does matter. And here's the thing. These guys were going to be weaselly no matter what people did. They were just looking for an excuse to not do the right thing. But I guarantee the calls did not hurt Jim Jordan's speaker candidacy. They helped. It's just, unfortunately, the weasels were going to find a way to kill Jim Jordan's speaker candidacy anyways. It really does matter. Trust me. I sit in these lunches with my colleagues, folks I agree with and disagree with. When they have the American people motivated about an issue, it does affect them and it does matter. We unfortunately, and I was one of the first people to endorse Jim Jordan's speaker candidacy. Yeah. I actually think we got a very good speaker out of this process, assuming Congressman Johnson gets through this afternoon. So despite the fact that I supported Jim Jordan, it was pretty clear early on that they were never going to let Jim Jordan become the speaker.
Correct.
And it had nothing to do with us calling. In fact, I think calling actually did help us a bit. Okay.
So call all of our Republicans. I mean, how many of we need all of them and then some Democrats too, don't we?
To divide the packages, to actually force us to have a separate debate, we just need 41 Republicans to stand tall and say, we're not going to do Joe Biden's bidding for him. We're not going to accept this combined package, $100 million behemoth, with, by the way, a lot of open border funding. So no, I actually think we just need Republicans to stick together. Even if they are pro-Ukraine funding, we need the message to be, we're not holding the American southern border and we're not holding Israel's security hostage to the Ukraine war.
Yeah. All right. So we don't need all of the Republicans, which helps because you'll never get the Romneys of the world. Okay. So call your senator. When does this vote go down?
Well, look, it probably won't go down for a couple of weeks here. So it's unclear when leadership will try to move this package. But right now, the fight is to divide it so that we have separate votes. And that's what I'm trying to work towards right now.
So call your senator today. And I know when I ask you that, I know because I would be rolling my eyes. You're in the car, and please don't roll your eyes. Keep your eyes on the road. But I would be rolling my eyes as well. I'd be like, oh, really? That's going to help. But we have to do all the things that we can do and then leave the rest of it up to God. Do what you're supposed to do. Do what the system requires. Don't, and I don't have to say this to you, my audience, don't do anything stupid. Don't make threats. You only hurt our cause. Hello, January 6th. Please don't do any of that. I don't mean to insult you and your intelligence on this. But please do call your senator and tell them to separate because you're getting a bogus border bill. Yeah, something's wrong with the administration in there. How can they be sending money over to Israel and then saying, "Oh, you got to stop. You got to stop. Don't do anything yet." There's something wrong with this. I think it's just an act to get the money to Ukraine. And we're headed towards World War III, and the last thing we should be doing is lumping all of this together.
That's exactly right, Glenn. And by the way, if you have Hamas terrorists who are obviously attacking the Israelis, but are also planning attacks in the United States of America, how does it make sense to facilitate their migration all across the continental United States? You cannot have real border security if you're paying people to move themselves from the southern border to all across America. That will facilitate an open border and will actually promote acts of terrorism in our country. I hate to say it, Glenn, because I hate to be alarmist about this stuff. I think we're at the greatest risk of a terrorist attack in this country that we've been in 20 years.
I agree.
And the reason is Joe Biden has let in a lot of designated terrorists and then paid money to have them flown across the country.
We have had, we know we've caught, I think it's 400 people that are on the watch list or the terrorist list. 400 we've caught. How many have come across that we didn't catch? I mean, we know that there are people that wish us ill that have come into this country, and it's only a matter of time. And when you see the streets in these Palestinian, marches where they are saying, gas the Jews, there's only one solution, that's not a group of people, or at least a few of the people that are friendly to our country. Those are people that do really bad things.
That's exactly right, Glenn. And by the way, a lot of these folks came into the country and feel no gratitude towards it and are importing the ethnic and religious hatreds of their own old country into their new one. This is why we should have, I really believe this, Glenn, we should have actual screening for people, even legal immigrants that come into our country, to actually confirm that they share some of our values. And that if we bring somebody from Palestine, for example, they're not going to come here and want to kill Jews and Westerners because of something they were taught in their old country. When you become an American or stay out of the country.
Amen. I can't believe that will probably cause you a headache today, because it is absolute common sense. J.D. Vance, thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it.
Take care.